All right, in last week's vlog, you guys left me a lot of questions about what are going to be the first mods I do to my new 2020 Jeep Wrangler JL with the EcoDiesel, and that's what we're going to be talking about in this week's video. And instead of showing you guys on my heavily modified JK behind me, I got my good friend Corey to bring by his fairly stock JL Wrangler, and we're going to go over just what I'm going to be modifying on mine when it arrives, hopefully fairly soon. Quickly, before we get started, are you guys interested in knowing why I went with a Wrangler instead of a Gladiator? Leave me some comments down below, because maybe I will do a follow-up video after this one talking about why I chose the Wrangler instead of the Gladiator, because that was one of the other more popular questions that I saw in last week's vlog comment section. And that's right, I do read the comments, guys, and I try to reply to as many as I can. So I've also gotten a ton of questions about what color Jeep did I pick. I wasn't going to reveal it to you guys until I actually picked it up, but how about if this video gets 1,000 likes, I will let you guys know in the next video just what color JL I ordered. All right, enough talking about that stuff. Let's get started talking about the first mods to be doing to a bone stock Jeep Wrangler JL. First, I'm going to take you guys over to the front bumper. I think one of the most important modifications that I'll be doing, and I think probably anybody who's going to be going out on any complicated trails or runs, is getting a winch. And I've been telling Corey he needs to get a winch for a while, but I think he's just looking for a bumper, and then we can get that winch on there. And that's just one of the great tools that you can be using for your recoveries if you get stuck or somebody else gets stuck on your run. Now, the great thing about the JL Wrangler, if you order the steel bumper group, you can get a worn mounting plate to mount a winch. You don't actually need to go out and buy an aftermarket bumper anymore. You can just add that to your factory steel bumper from Jeep. So that's what I will be doing. Now, Corey has the all plastic bumper on his. We are looking for a steel one. If anybody local knows of one, let me know. Shoot me a DM over on Instagram. But I'm going to be using the steel bumper that I ordered with my Wrangler, and I'm going to be adding that worn winch cradle to it. And of course, I'm going to be adding a worn winch to my new rig when it gets here. But what about the bumper on the back? Now, the bumper on the back is notorious for ripping off the license plate. So that's going to be something I am definitely going to be replacing. Now, there are a lot of different tire carrier options out there too, and when you get up to larger tires, you want to be thinking about how you want to be carrying that spare around without damaging your tailgate or the tailgate hinge brackets or anything like that. So on my JK, I have a body mounted carrier from Poison Spider. I don't think I want to be drilling holes into the body right off the start on my new JL. So I'm going to be ordering a bumper with a built-in tire carrier. Now, Warren also makes a great looking bumper. Go check them out. I'll put some links down in the description for any of the products I'm talking about here. But I'm going to be ordering Warren's rear bumper with built-in tire carrier. So that's going to also let me solve the problem for carrying around that larger spare. So you can go with different tire carrier options, body mount, tailgate mount, or a bumper mount. And in my case, I'm going to go with the bumper mount. Give that a try. We installed a tailgate mount from Evo on Mark's Jeep in a previous vlog, and I have the body mount on mine. So I figured, well, let's give it a try. Let's try something out on a bumper. We'll see how it goes. So I'm going to be ordering the Warren bumper mount, tire carrier, and rear bumper, and that's also going to solve that license plate problem from getting ripped off when it hits obstacles and rocks on the back. All right, so we just talked about having a bumper that can carry a larger wheel. So what am I going to be adding? Well, I'm going to be adding 37-inch tires, and I think that is a good size without having to get into major upgrades. All the diesel Wranglers come with Dana 44s, but I do have the Rubicon with the lockers, and I'm going to go with 37-inch tires, and I think that is a good size and a good fit for the four doors without having to get into major axle upgrades. But I am going to need to add a lift to it. One of the first mods is going to be tires. We'll talk about wheels in just a second, but in order to get those 37-inch tires, now the Rubicon does have the Highline fenders that are an inch, or I think an inch and a half higher than the Sport or the Sahara. So I do have some more front clearance under the fenders for those larger tires, but I am going to be adding a lift, and I'm going to be replacing all of the control arms as well as the track bars, the tie rod, and the drag link. So the control arms are a great upgrade. Now, it isn't essential. You can add control arms to your lift. It basically allows you to adjust the caster angle on your front axle. It's going to allow you, it's going to make your Jeep more stable when you're driving on the highway, and the joints in those control arms are going to allow for more flex and articulation. So I will be replacing all 8 of the control arms. With the new lift, I also want to be replacing the track bars on the front and the rear. And so I'm going to be getting a lift that includes those track bars, and that is going to allow me to center my axle under my Jeep as I lift it up. Because if you don't get the adjustable track bars, your axle will start to shift over to the side as you lift it up because of the way that the suspension geometry works. Now I'm also going to be replacing my tie rod and drag link. I'm looking at a 3.5 or a 4-inch lift, and especially if I go with a 4-inch lift, I want to be able to have an adjustable drag link so that I can adjust my steering, and then I can also get it in line with my front track bar, because you want the 2 of them parallel so that you have a stable ride and you don't have a lot of bump steer. And I'm going to be replacing the tie rod mostly because a lot of the tie rods, when you bang into something, they bend. That throws your steering off. When your steering wheel is not centered, it starts to put codes on your dash, and it's just not a great time. So as part of that, I'm going to be replacing the tie rod as well. I don't know if I would say that replacing your tie rod or your drag link are essential first mods. It kind of depends on the kind of off-roading you want to do, but it also depends on how much lift you add. If you add a 1.5 or maybe a 2.5 inch lift, you can probably get away without replacing your drag link and your steering linkage, and you probably don't need to replace your tie rod maybe until you damage it or bend it. But those are good mods to think about, and I find that they're a good investment because I just don't have to be dealing with them later, especially when I'm out on long road trips. But I'm not going to get into which lift I'm going with. I'm looking at a couple different companies. There's some new suspension parts that are coming out that I'm really kind of looking to see if I can get my hands on early. There are several companies out there that make really good suspension products, and I think a lot of people have varying preferences based on previous experience or maybe what their friends are running. So I'm not going to tell you which suspension to be buying, but there's lots of information out there, and definitely leave some comments down below with what suspension you're running and let me know what you think of it and whether you recommend it, because that may help influence me in the decisions I'm going to be making when I go to buy my suspension. So one other thing to consider with your suspension and your lift: this is EcoDiesel specific. Now the EcoDiesel weighs more. I can't remember right off the top of my head. I think it's around 650 pounds more than a 3.6 liter or a 2.0 liter turbo 4-cylinder. That increased weight, from talking to a few suspension manufacturers already, they are going to be releasing an option for the EcoDiesel. Now that may be a slightly different spring rate. It may be a spacer to add with existing kits, but because I am getting the EcoDiesel, I did want to note that that is one thing that I came across in my research, that I have to be making sure that I get a suspension system for the EcoDiesel and its extra weight. And it depends. Right now, I may just look at getting a higher lift, like a 4.5 inch lift. I think I want to be right around 3.5 inches, but with that extra weight, it may compress it down. And maybe as some companies release some spring rates for the heavier EcoDiesel, I can swap those out, or maybe they'll be available when I'm actually ready to get my suspension into my new Jeep. But I did want to point that out. So let's talk about tires, guys. I'm looking at 37 or maybe 38 inch tires. I would love to hear what you guys are running and what you've been thinking of them. A lot of people are running the Patagonia tires. I have no experience with them, and I don't know anybody around me that's running them, but they seem to be quite cost effective. But it means going up to a 38 inch tire. And I did do a video a few weeks ago talking about the differences and just how much impact a heavier tire and heavier wheel makes to both your Jeep's acceleration, its stopping, and the wear and tear on the drivetrain. So if you want to check that out, it's up in the corner. So I am thinking about weight. I am keeping that in mind. Even though I will have the diesel with the 442 pound-feet of torque, I don't want to make this a giant slug of a Jeep, sort of like the JK is now. So I am keeping rotational mass as a big consideration, and I want to keep it as lightweight and fast and efficient on fuel as I can. So what about wheels? Well, there are several wheel options out there. I think the first question that you have to ask yourself is, do you want to go with beadlocks? Beadlocks provide a huge advantage to airing down, preventing the bead from being unseated from your tire when you're out off-roading. I have beadlocks on my JK. It's something I'm thinking about whether or not I want to go with beadlocks on the JL. Now, beadlocks, you have to check your region, whether it's your province here in Canada or it's your state down in the US, or whatever your region is where your Jeep is and you're living, because they're not always street legal. A lot of beadlocks out there say that they're not DOT approved, and that may be a bigger or smaller problem depending on where you live. There are beadlocks out there such as Hutchison's, which are DOT approved, but also if you go back and look at my how much do tires and wheels weigh, Hutchison's are some of the heaviest wheels that you can actually put on your Jeep. And that's adding a lot of rotational mass to your rig. So that's something to think about. There's also a new technology from Method, which they have incorporated into a street legal wheel called bead grip, which is actually a set of ridges just inside the bead that's supposed to really increase the amount of force that needs to be applied to the sidewall of a tire to actually unseat it from the rim. So that's another set of wheels that I'm looking at. Anybody at Method watching this? Let's talk. But I'm not sure if I want to run beadlocks or not. I'm still thinking about what type of wheels. So that is something you want to think about, but you will want to look at adding aftermarket wheels to your Jeep. The reason why is when you start to add those new suspension components or the tie rod with larger ends on it, a lot of the kits recommend that you have a more back-spaced wheel than what comes from the factory. Now you can either add spacers to your wheels and push them out 1/2 inch or 3/4 of an inch, but I really don't like that idea. I want to add some aftermarket off-road wheels. They're going to endure the abuse a little bit better than the factory wheels, and then I don't have to deal with spacers every time I need to go and service either my brakes or my wheel hubs or anything like that. You know, I think there's a lot of differing opinions when it comes to wheel spacers, but for me, I think the way to go is to buy a properly set of back-spaced wheels for your application that will have the room you need for your aftermarket suspension and steering components. So what about when I put larger tires and my speedo is way out and I don't have TPMS or tire pressure monitoring system sensors in the tires? I'm going to be looking at some tuner to be able to program those out. I know there are a few options available for the current engine models of the JL. I don't know if they're going to work on the EcoDiesel yet. I'm still researching which tuner I want to get. I don't really need a tuner to do any performance mods. I just want to be able to program out the bare essentials at this point and recalibrate my speedometer and let my Jeep know that I don't need TPMS sensors and it can stop telling me I have low tire pressure. So that is something else that I recommend if you're adding larger tires or removing your tire pressure sensors from your rig. You want to get a tuner of some sort to be able to program out and disable that sensor monitoring system and recalibrate your speedometer. So the other thing that's really important to me is adding aftermarket sliders or rocker guards, whatever you want to call them. There's lots of different options out there. On the JK, I have some on the side here that have bolted to the side of the body and protect underneath, as well as the lower rocker here. On the Rubicon, it comes with rock rails, but I am going to be taking those off and adding something aftermarket. I want some rock rails that stick out from the body that prevent something that comes too close to me, especially trees, from actually hitting the doors and the door handles, as well as I want a set of rock rails that give me more of a step up. With the Jeep being lifted 3.5 or 4.5 inches, I want to have a step for my wife and for Maddie to easily get into the Jeep. But I want to get something that's rough and rugged that's going to stand up to the abuse. So I'm looking at a couple different brands, but I'd love to hear you guys' suggestions. But I really like the look of ones that are really heavily built that can take the weight of the Jeep, completely leaning on them, but as well can be used and have a nice grippy surface to step onto to get into the Jeep for people that aren't 6'2" like me. So I will be adding some rock rails to my Jeep right away. I will be taking the Rubicon ones off. I think the Rubicon ones do a fairly good job depending on the type of terrain that you're wheeling. If it's more rocky terrain where you're just gonna be dropping your Jeep down onto obstacles, it does a great job at protecting the pinch seam underneath there. But if you want something that's gonna stick out a bit and prevent things from getting too close to your Jeep and that you can also use as a step, you want to think about something aftermarket. Moving along from suspension, wheels, and all that armor type stuff, there are a few other mods that I consider essential. Now, the first one to me is having an onboard air supply. I have a pair of Viair compressors in my JK. They have worked quite well, but they do take up a lot of room. I'm going to be looking at getting the ARB twin compressor. I hear that it's a little bit slower than the dual 480C pumps that I have from Viair, but it is a lot more compact. If you want to check it out, I will put some links down in the description, and I'm trying to just decide exactly where I want to mount it. Commonly on the JKs, it is mounted underneath the engine hood. I haven't seen any installations yet on the JLs of mounting it underneath the hood. I do like that idea rather than mounting it inside the cab, as it can get quite noisy if you're using it, and especially if Maddie's hanging out in there while I'm airing up. I don't like the compressor inside the cab. So I'm just trying to think about what options I have available for mounting that. Now we have to remember that the EcoDiesel engine configuration is a lot different than the 3.6 liter or the 2-liter turbo. And actually the airbox is on the driver's side instead of the passenger side. So I think anything that's existing right now is probably not going to work for my application. I am looking for options. If you guys know anything, let me know. Now that kind of leads me to my next thing. What about switches? What am I going to be using to control these compressors and lights and various other things that I may install on my Jeep? Well, as you may remember from my previous video a couple weeks ago where I talked about how I spec'd my new JL, I did get the high output alternator option, which includes the 4 onboard switches, which includes switch connections underneath the hood and connections underneath the dash. The 4 built-in switches to my Jeep's dash will allow me to power things like my radio, my compressor, and maybe any lights that I might be adding to it. So I'm not going to be looking at buying a switch solution right off the bat. There are a few cool switch solutions that do some things that I can't do with the onboard switching that comes with the Jeep, like use input triggers such as reverse lights or the interior lights coming on to trigger additional reverse lights or rock lights or puddle lights, whatever you want to call them. So that might be something I look at in the future, but I don't really consider that an essential mod. And I think that the Jeep adding the option to have built-in switches with wiring is great, because it's just one less thing that I have to have inside the cab of my Jeep. If I leave my roof down or I ordered it with a soft top, I don't have to worry about things getting stolen or people walking by and seeing them mounted to my dash or my window. Now the next thing I'm going to talk about is going to be mounted to my dash, and I think it is essential to have some sort of GPS system, whether it is a built-in GPS or a tablet like I run. For me, it allows me to track all the trails that I've run. In case something happens and I need to double back, maybe without one of the other rigs with me, I know where I came from and how to get through there. And it just lets me record all of my adventures. I like to have my map up on a tablet. So I'm gonna be looking at some sort of mounting option to the dash. In my JK, I just drilled it and screwed it into the dash. I don't think I wanna be doing that on the JL. So I'm gonna be looking at some options that bolt onto the dash that are gonna allow me to hold my phone and my tablet. Now the 2 of those electronic devices I can easily take out of the Jeep when I get out, and I usually only have the tablet in there when I'm out off-roading, and I'd never go anywhere without my phone. So I'm not too worried about those 2 items being stolen or somebody walking by and trying to get them. So I just want a mounting solution that's going to allow me to mount my phone and my tablet to the dash and be readily available right where I need them. And then I think the last thing I'm going to add to the driver's area is obviously going to be some sort of radio communication system. I haven't decided which brand I'm going with, and I'm not going to get into talking about VHF or ham radios and CB radios and all the other radio types out there. That is a huge topic to be talking about, but I am trying to think about where I want to mount the radio or radios that I'm going to be using, and that's probably the only thing that's going to stay inside the cab that isn't factory, that I can't take out when I'm parking my Jeep somewhere. But so I'm going to be looking for something that is inconspicuous, maybe hides under the dash and has the speaker hidden, but I can hear it and make adjustments. So if you guys have any creative ideas for mounting different radio hardware inside your JLs, I would love to hear them. I still haven't completely come up with a solution for mounting the radio and how I want to mount that, but I will be figuring it out soon. And don't worry guys, all of the things I'm talking about here in the video, as they arrive and I start modifying my Jeep, I will be making vlogs on each one of them. So make sure you hit that subscribe button and don't miss any of my future uploads, as well as all of the crazy road trips that I have planned to the various Jeeping events all around the Pacific Northwest over the next few months. Okay, the one last thing that I will be adding to the interior, and this isn't really essential for off-roading, but is one of the mods that I really like in my JK, because I go on a lot of road trips, I always run the soft top on it, is I'm going to be adding some sort of security enclosure to the rear of the Jeep that is not going to be openable unless you unlock the tailgate. And I use the Tuffy security enclosure on the JK, and it works great. It's enclosed on all 3 sides as well as the top, and you can't open that unless the tailgate is unlocked. So like I said, I like to be able to leave the top down, or I have the soft top. I don't want to worry about people stealing stuff out of my Jeep if I'm parked overnight on one of my road trips or anything like that. So I want the cab completely clear of things that people might want to steal, but I still have to have my recovery gear and various other essential items that I bring with me when I'm off-roading. So I'm going to be adding a security enclosure to the back of my JL right off the start. And then I can put any gear that I need in there. I can put it in the trunk essentially that forms by adding it to the back of my JL. So I will be adding that. Those are a lot of the essential items. What are some things that I won't be adding?